It's 4:02. We're going to officially get started. I know that it's a gorgeous day out there, so I appreciate you giving us about an hour of your time. I just left Heather at the upper elementary, and it's tempting, I'm sure, not to participate today. So from our list of appointees, I just want to go through and just clarify who's with us and so forth. So our new interim superintendent, he started on April 2nd, amazing person. And professional, Dr. Erwin Weischeitel. He is out of the office. He's on a pre-planned trip. Those arrangements were made before he was hired by the board. I've been in contact with him throughout the day. I have Mr. Hauser here with me sitting in person, and he as well has had contact. So although he's not here, he is definitely involved in monitoring what's going on here in the district. Also this morning, Dr. Caroline Johns from Northgate, our superintendent from another district appointee, reached out to me as well. She had a scheduled conflict today. She sends her regards. And I did tell her, Asia, that you were going to tell her thank you for allowing you and Hope to go over and visit at Northgate with Nicole. And she said, absolutely, she was happy to accommodate the visit. So I want you to know that I did share that with her. We don't have our residents with us. Is that right, Martha? I'm looking for Tina Nagel and or Mr. Jackson?
I do not see them.
Okay, so I think I'm going to have to revisit those appointments. I'll talk to the representative from the IU, specifically Dr. Joe Jacoby, about that. I know when I first came on board and we scheduled the first meeting in January, Tina Nagel did reach out. I've not had any contact from Mr. Jackson, and certainly we want to have residents attend when they can, and that would be most meetings, I would think. So we may revisit that. And also joining us, not on the list of appointees, but guests for us this evening, Asia Davis. She is the senior high school principal, and it's a pleasure to have her join us. And then also, again, our PFM analysts, researchers, Stephen Ramirez and Hannah Friedrich. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to follow the agenda. And Martha, thank you for converting that to PowerPoint. And we are recording this meeting. As you probably heard me say to Mr. Hauser, the doors are open to the superintendent's office here. This is considered a public meeting. We follow sunshine. The agenda was posted more than 24 hours ago. And certainly anybody is welcome to join as we start our meeting and continue. All right, so I've already referenced the first points. Dr. Weischeitel started, definitely rolling, very, very good fit for the district and has a very high standard. Appreciate that very much. So when you look at the larger position here of a superintendent, there's been a lot of activity and we are fully immersed in the review of candidates. Interviews have started and so forth, and I'm going to provide some more specific information. So the board's wish was that stakeholders would have an opportunity to inform the development, the formatting of the questions that would be asked of those who were selected to be interviewed. And so there was a survey that was launched by Dan Rinkus from the IU, who provides communication and marketing services to the district. And that particular survey was launched March 6th, and it closed a month later on April 6th. Dan, along the way, shared a spreadsheet of responses and so forth. And there were 30 people who opted to give some type of input. As we've talked about before, Devapar consultants are a subcontractor for PFM. And so the services of PFM and their subcontractor, Devapar, are paid for by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. These services are available at no cost to the district. And they're providing hours and hours of support. We really, really appreciate that. So Devapar's role was to look at the survey respondents' feedback, their input, and to take the themes and topics mentioned and to kind of weave them into a bank of interview questions. And so after the posting closes, noted there in the agenda, the former interim superintendent, myself, Mr. Hauser, we initially looked at the documents that were forwarded by. So Devapar, they managed the address, if you will, to which candidates responded. They collected all of the supporting documents, resumes, and so forth. And then they forwarded over to the district, and the three of us took a closer look and confirmed that these individuals had letters of eligibility or the complement and otherwise suitable to be interviewed. Okay, beginning April 3rd then, there was a subsequent review of those documents by a larger panel, and there were 11 people in that particular panel, and you can see who those individuals were. So the 3 board members, these 3 have been designated by the larger board to be representatives who will review and interview and then make a final recommendation to the board when it is whittled down to a single candidate. So the 3 board members, the new interim superintendent, Dr. Weisheitel, 3 of the building principals, and 2 representatives from the AIU who also serve as appointees to our FRAC, if you will, and that would be Leanna and Jill, went through, looked at the documents, and they had a score sheet, very simplistic, recommend for interview or not, and they spent time. It was not done in a group style or fashion. We didn't want any influence. We wanted people on that panel to be to feel free to look through the documents and to make their own decisions about whether or not individuals should be moved along for an interview. And Mr. Hauser was the one who actually took those sheets separately, privately, and he tallied the responses. The next activity related to hiring of a new superintendent happened on April 15th. Again, the 3 board member representatives, Dr. Weisheitel, Mr. Hauser, and myself, we met to review the feedback from the group of 11. There were no changes made. This smaller panel agreed to go with the recommendations of the larger panel, and they decided that they would interview 6 top candidates. And again, it was based on the review of the larger group of 11. And 3 of those candidates were actually interviewed last Wednesday, and 3 more will be interviewed tonight. There was an option given of virtual or in person, and we have questions that are being used for those interviews, and it's going really well. I have to tell you, honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised. This is a pretty good pull. Certainly there are people there who this would be their first position, but there are also several candidates who have been in central office, and there's even a handful who are seated superintendents. And I'm talking about people with stellar reputations who are known for a high standard. So the district seems to be in very good hands. So after tonight, then there will be more conversation, of course, with the 3 board representatives, the central office people, myself included. And then the thought is that that group of 6 will be whittled down to 2. Now, that, you know, there's certainly the option to change it. Who knows, there could be 3 that this panel says, well, you know what, I really need 3. I'm just not sure about 1 or 2 of the individuals. I like them, but I'm not sure if they're a good fit. Certainly the design is fluid, so that could happen. We've talked about May 7th maybe as being the last round for the finalists. The board, the larger board, may be part of that. That could be a separate meeting or interview. I'm not sure at this point, but May 22nd is still the board's anticipated meeting by which they are going to recommend a superintendent, barring anything unforeseen. So I always want to put that disclaimer on it. Any questions about that process so far? Okay. All right. We're going to move on then in the agenda. You know, I want to throw this back in there, the reminder about the criterion. There's a single one that talks about the importance of academics. And that's specifically found on page 14, because you hear financial recovery. And so we think, oh, it's just a matter of having dollars in the bank. And once the district is solid or more solid and strong financially, everything's good. And then the district would qualify for exit and then naturally move into 5 years of monitoring. Well, again, there's more to it than that. And we know that everything ties together. Certainly a school district has to manage operations, but the primary job is to educate children, right? So those 2 areas have to be strong, have to be solidified. And that specific language from page 14 states the district meets or demonstrates substantial progress in meeting the academic performance PSSA keystone graduation rate and attendance goals outlined in the introduction of the recovery plan. So we have to have quantifiable evidence. We can think, well, it feels better, it's calm, or whatever adjective you want to use, but there has to be some proof of that. And that would be part of the petition to ask the Secretary of Ed to consider exit for the district. So as we think about financial recovery, please do not lose sight of the fact that we are an educational business. You know, I'm an educator by trade and training and experience, and education is super important to me. So I'm always going to be trying to reiterate that. All right, so new topics for consideration tonight. We have more positive news. There was a new board member added at the last board meeting. So now there's only 2 of 9 positions left unfilled, and so it's very positive. Also want to move on to finance. It's a new topic, but it's not a new topic. We know that the development of the 25-26 district budget is well underway. We know that. But we want to give an update report because when the board next meets May 22nd, they are going to vote on a proposed final budget that will then start a 30-day public review. And then barring anything that might warrant a change to that document, they're going to be asked in the next month to approve that and submit it off to Harrisburg. So just some things for the group to keep in mind. We continue to review positions reflected in the current draft. We want to make sure that this budget is as accurate as it can be. Again, you have to remain fluid. People are going to come and go. There are going to be better ideas and suggestions along the way. Maybe let's blend this. Maybe this fits. Or no, let's absorb that. We don't need that. And the district always has to be open to those types of things. Something that's, I think, very, very key is there was $275,000 in capital project expenditures recently added to the budget. And that was last week. So part of my role is slowing everything down to make sure an appropriate level of review is given to things mostly that have to do with finance, but also academic. Are these good decisions? Are we sure? Do we feel confident with the numbers? Are we confident with the programming? And so as we started going through different things, you know, talking to the new director of facilities, hey, I know there's grants. We use the term grant generically, but are we really tracking dollars and cents? You're talking about other things. Maybe there's a change order. Maybe something went over what an anticipated cost was. We have to be mindful of those things. And as a guiding document, PFM helped to put together a capital plan, and it's dated May 2024. And that plan at the time specified what the projects were and prioritized the list. Along the way, of course, there's not enough money to do everything. So the board had to decide, and they chose, and I think it was a very wise decision, to put a lot of the time, effort, and the money into the elementary schools, kind of get them finished. But we still have the junior, senior high that has a lot of stuff that has to be completed. So as we look at that, before I move on, Chad and Ara, is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
There is not. Yeah, I mean, as I look at this slide here, Nancy, I think you're hitting the high points, and we certainly have that budget coming up for the proposed budget coming up in May, and then the final budget in June. So that's the focus of our efforts for sure.
Okay, thank you. And so thinking about the junior, senior high school, you know, we've been talking with our business office contractor, JMA. Chad represents that particular group, about, you know, what does it say in that capital plan from 2024? And it talks about a sizable number. Well, what if something happens when we have to cover that? We have to make sure that we have money set aside. The recovery plan repeatedly talks about putting money away, a set aside portion every year because things are going to break. We know that. And having lived through this experience in another district, but serving as a superintendent in that district, I know we didn't fix things unless they broke. I mean, we were so cash strapped. That's what happens, even for, you know, a private individual and a residence, right? If you don't have extra money, you're not going to be doing a lot of that preventative maintenance work or activities. And it's the same thing here naturally, and it catches up with you. And of course it has with the district. So we have that big number, and we have to make sure that there's money there. We know that February 2025, the board authorized via resolution to put away $2 million. That's been moved to the Capital Reserve Fund, as indicated there. PSLAF, we would get a little bit more interest using that particular bank or institution, if you will. And so that's why the money's there. And just again, to reiterate why 7.8 million, 7.5 million referenced in that 2024 plan. And keep in mind, that's 2024 Now we know we're talking about tariffs and things, and we don't know what that number is going to look like. Also, their $300,000 is referenced in that plan, not specifically 300,000, but the return to the one-to-one initiative, so that when school has to be canceled due to weather or systems failure, instruction doesn't stop. You know, it's really a disadvantage for the kids here that if there's a snow day, or as I said, a cancellation, or even after weather. I know there was a 2-hour delay today, but if the district had to cancel, you know, what are the options for the kids? And certainly online learning wouldn't have worked today with internet down, but you know, we just have to be prepared for those things. Any questions before we move on to our PFM representatives? Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to ask Hannah and Stephen to talk to us about the financial recovery plan amendment that we anticipate. And just to let you know, when Dr. Sofo was here, he was collecting some notes on some things. Certainly I've been collecting notes, and now Dr. Weishadow has some things that he's recommending. Of course, Mr. Hauser, having been here 2 years, he has very important input. And so we're trying to feed this information to the PFM researchers and analysts and asking them to help us format that. In our past advisory committee meetings, giving you a little flavor of some of the things that stood out maybe in that latest month, things that we want to talk about. And those are just piecemeal. I've only given you a little bit of exposure. And now PFM is getting close to producing a comprehensive document that incorporates what we've talked about a little bit, or what I've shared via this committee, plus a lot of other stuff you haven't heard about yet. The goal would be this summer to put it out on a public day, a 30-day public review, and then to ask the board to approve it. And remember, in financial recovery, you know, it's a tough thing. This is the time to give input as we are developing that, because the board is obligated to approve it. So we want to make sure that it's in a format that is meaningful to the district, and really, if followed with fidelity, will really promote that positive change, move the district to exit monitoring for 5 years, and then get on with our lives, right? So Hannah and Stephen, want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Abel. Thank you for previewing a lot of things that I was going to overview today. So I'm going to be, no worries. I'm just going to share my screen real quickly. I have a couple quick slides and a quick sort of a show and tell a little bit that I'll get through. And so I also agree it's a beautiful day, and I will try to get you guys out of here. So what Dr. Abel said is, in fact, pretty accurate. We have been discussing and talking about what an amendment to the financial recovery plan looks like, and what it should mean and what it really entails. And so what I want to do today is really provide a little overview of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and a little bit of how we intend to do it, and what it means for the near term. Just once again, I think everybody's very familiar with the financial recovery plan, but the goal of it is to provide a structured roadmap and detailed set of actions for the district to navigate through a significant financial distress and return to a state of health, stability, and long-term viability. As Dr. Abel said, it includes financial pieces and components, but also instructional, academic, culture, a whole suite of broad topics and chapters that are already in the plan. So you might be asking yourself, so why do that right now? Why would we do an update? Well, the last one was from 2022, and there's been considerable change that's happened over the last 3 years, including leadership changes that we've seen transition in superintendency. We've seen transitions of CROs. We are no longer in an ESSER environment and dealing with the changing financial conditions that is leaving us in, and entering a period of who knows what with the next financial federal level changes to come. But what we want to do is set ourselves up to create a financial recovery plan that represents what is currently happening and currently true to the district. And so when we started some of that work most recently by updating the recovery tables that we talked about 2 meetings ago, I want to say, it became very evident that the district has changed in just those 3 years. And so some of the initiatives and the action steps that exist to date need updating. and they need to be, and they should look different. So rough overview of what we mean. We've started this review of current financial recovery plan initiatives and action items. We've already started to update a number of the analyses, as I mentioned in the tables. That's one of the pieces that we still continue to do. What we are doing and in the process of right now is we're reviewing current initiatives and action steps. We're thinking about what do we keep, what do we update, what do we delete, and thinking about that holistically as it looks across the entire plan and across the different chapters. One of the things that Dr. Rabel and I have talked about, this is an iterative process. We'll have an idea, we'll try to put it to words, and then we'll evaluate those words again and again and again. And so I think that you should expect to see some updates in that way. The other point that I think is important to mention is around community engagement. We've been thinking of this forum and this group here as the place where we'll be sharing much more detail, giving you guys previews and details of the initiatives and action steps, and hoping to gain your critical feedback to understand if you all feel that it's directionally correct, and even at a detail level, if it's accurate and the right, let's call it metric or goal set to evaluate culture, finances, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So our goal is to submit an amended plan in July. So just a few months away from now. It does start a 30-day period of public review. And in an ideal world, we have everything in place for the start of the new school year, for the new superintendent. And we then transition into implementation, monitoring, and continuous improvement. So one of the things that I want to kind of talk about and stress here is going to be the implementation and monitoring of the work. We have been building out systems with some of our other partners around strengthening monitoring, and where we see a lot of ability to lean in on the plan is going to be around just that. And so what I want to do, I'm going to jump over and kind of just give you a quick walkthrough of a sample initiatives that I think might help to kind of clarify what some of this kind of means in reality. So this spreadsheet here has all of the initiatives and action items that are in the financial recovery plan. I try to actually go on the district website to link it and be able to share it. It's actually down. I don't know. Maybe it's just for me, but that's a side note. but where, if you go through the recovery plan right now, you'll be able to see these initiatives and action steps, and you'll see this field called recurrence, or what we'll probably name it in the near future as monitoring frequency. And so as you can see, the thinking here, here's the initiative or the kind of big bucket item that we expect to action that we are hoping and ready to support the district and executing on. And here are the more nuanced and the detail level descriptions of what that means. On the frequency side, over time, I think, is one of the things that we want to emphasize. And one of the pieces that we see when we work across so many partners is just the ability to execute over time so many of these tasks, I think, is really important. And so we'll be working specifically to build capacity to be able to execute a lot of these things over time. And so I think, and again, we're going to be looking at each one of these. We've already started the work of doing that. I know that Dr. Rabel has shared a number of them here in this space here with you all. And so I kind of want to I'll pause there, but I think I just shared a little bit of the process, and I'll kind of stop there, but wanted to quickly kind of open it up if there were any questions or any clarifying points that I can make and to jump into.
Stephen, let me just add something. You talked about increasing capacity, and that is so important. When you think about financial recovery, we've talked in the past about, you feel like it's a black eye, you feel like there's almost a shame factor involved, but there's another side to that. there's all hands on deck. You know, the level of support that the district is receiving is amazing. But as you move towards the position of exit and then the 5 years of monitoring, we have to wean the district off of all these extra supports because they're not going to follow. And you think about that. And I will just tell you personally, from my experience, Stephen and Hannah from PFM, for example, you know, there's something I look at, I see it doesn't make sense, but I don't have the technical expertise that they do. So I can talk to them. We meet every Thursday and I can talk to them and say, hey, can you dig into this, whatever it might be? We might have to provide some data for them, share files or whatever, but they are so keen that they're able to drill down to a level that a layperson can understand. And we say, okay, is that something different, unusual? And they really help us to discern, is this a problem or is it an anomaly? It's not a big deal. You know, it's just something, a blip, keep moving. But those extra layers of review are going to be gone at some point. So we want to think about truly building capacity. And I think what I've experienced here and in the other district that I was in too, we're so much in survival mode. We can't even think about best practice. You know, trying to get through the day, get through the week, the month, the year, what have you. We've got to restore a sense of calm. And I think that has to do with the changing positions, people coming and going in key positions. And once we have stability in the leadership, I really feel like if the systems are built, things will naturally settle down. It'll feel more stable. And then the district can really start thinking about best practices and how to sustain. But I think like Stephen said, this is the roadmap. Okay, here's what we're going to do now. And then we'll wean off the level of support and the district will stand alone and you know, do these things that need to be done in order to make sure the district has the stability that everybody deserves. So thank you for saying that about building capacity.
Could I ask one question? And it was on the previous slide where you had about the revenue. And I think it was above, it says expand pilot agreements.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what that was. Could you just explain that? And I'm sorry if you already explained it.
Oh, pilot agreements is a particular type of revenue line that comes into the district, and it has to do with finding different agreements to hopefully bring in more revenue. It's not like a pilot, like a program pilot, but it refers to a particular type of revenue stream.
Pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes. So usually that would apply to any properties in the district that is maybe like not paying property taxes for any reason. Like a church or a religious institution is the first thing that comes to mind. Sometimes some of the school districts that we've worked with, those entities provide either like a donation or a service to the school district as a thank you, or as a payment in lieu of that obligation of a property tax payment.
Thank you.
You know what, let me just add something too as a concrete example of how things have changed. There was a tracking document in place. Heather, I know you shared with me what you had. It was color coded. Stephen had something similar that he shared with me. So it was the district's assessment maybe about a year ago of the gains they'd made with these specific initiatives. So rating, you know, had they been started, where they completed, and just monitoring and so forth. And two items just stood out to me. One was about pre-K, and there was a note in there that the district had opted not to pursue pre-K options on site, and that was embedded in that tracking document. Recovery plan talks about exploration of. Well, you know, in this moment right now, we are in conversation with the IU. There is nothing solid, there's nothing confirmed, but we are actively exploring the option of maybe the IU moving one of the community pre-K programs up to the primary center. Certainly we feel there's space up there, and that could be a positive thing. You know, sometimes families, first-time parents are really nervous about sending their child to pre-K. Maybe having that earlier exposure to the school might really calm fears and may, who knows, influence families to keep their child enrolled here and to naturally just transition into kindergarten versus looking at charter school options. So that's one that comes to mind. If we just use the tracking document as it was about a year ago, then we would say, okay, we're not even thinking about that. Another one is the Foster building. So a former school here that was part of the district, no longer used as a school, but now it's rented out. There was a reference in the recovery plan about thinking about selling that because buildings are aging, right? Just like we talked about junior, senior high school, there's stuff to do. Just even thinking so simply as snow removal. As the landlord, we have an obligation to do different things. And so we are revisiting that and thinking about, you know, maybe it would be the time to sell, and the board will decide how to go about that process if they decide to exercise that option. But we didn't want to take that off the table. So those are just two concrete examples of why we want to revisit what was put into place in 2022. And then again, me as an educator, I want more emphasis on education. I mean, that's just the bottom line there. So we'll see some new entries that look more academic than financial.
Yeah, and this is the list of initiatives that Dr. Rabel and Dr. Sofo and others have already kind of contributed to that we're going to be working in. So I don't know if Dr. Rabel, you want to address any of them now, or leave it like that for the moment.
Well, I can talk about PRT as another one that comes to mind. We've had preliminary conversations with ABC Transit, and also a representative from PRT, Allies for Children, helped to connect us. Sounded very, very favorable, like it's doable. There's only 3 buses currently serving the middle school, high school. And so is it possible that maybe we could issue a highly discounted PRT bus pass that it's 24/7? Kids could use it, and they can actually have a family member use it. I mean, that's not encouraged, but it's possible. So there are a lot of benefits. However, since we had that conversation, now we know the local media is reporting that PRT may be cutting their line services, what have you, because of budget concerns they have within their organization. So again, that need for fluid consideration. In this series of notes, there's references about annual board trainings. You know, any particular position, I don't care if it's a paid position or it is a board member, which is an unpaid position, we all need to stay fresh, up to date on different topics. Also, you know, with that, my recommendation is that the solicitor would decide what the topic is. The solicitor knows best practice, knows what's compliant. And if we are continuing to falter in a certain area, then we would want to have some type of annual training. Again, the solicitor would pick the topic, not necessarily facilitate. That is no different than many districts who do annual board retreats and they infuse training in that. So that's just a different way to say it.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, with financial recovery status, I don't think the community, you know, paying these incremental tax increases would appreciate a retreat. You know, that language, it would seem like everybody's out hobnobbing on the tax dollar, and I think training's a better word to use. Any other questions, comments about some of these amendment topics? And we'll dig each month until we get to July. We're going to dig in a little bit more and look at another iteration. And your input is very important.
Yeah, and maybe one thing that could also help is like if you all have a specific way that you'd like to review them and kind of give us an idea of how best you'd want to kind of engage with them. I think that would also help us as well. Make sure that you guys have full access and are able to provide feedback in whatever way that works best for you.
I'm glad you reminded me of that. So when we meet tomorrow at 9, let's talk about that. But I think, you know, we just kind of clean up the document a little bit, and then we just naturally share it with everybody who's on this particular committee. And then they'll have an opportunity in between meetings to look at their leisure, maybe make some side notes. You know, remember, all of you are here because of the position that you hold. You have valuable information, key wisdom that you can share with us. If you have experience with something and it could benefit the district, we want to hear about it. If you're somebody here who is boots on the ground and this looks good in theory on paper, but you're thinking, oh my God, it's just not going to work, and here's why, that input is very, very important as well. Because keep in mind, again, once it's polished and ready to go to the board after the 30-day public review, the board is obligated to approve it. So we really want to think very carefully about what we're committing the board to and the district. Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions, now we have another guest, and this is just, this is for me as an educator. I want her to share with us. It's Asia Davis, our senior high school principal. I want her to share her enthusiasm, the wonderful things that she's planning for next year, and what's new and different. And this is not change for the sake of change. This is necessary change. So I'm going to turn it over to Asia. And we are going to be a very kind audience. I know she's a little bit nervous, but there's no need to be. So go ahead. Thank
you, Dr. Rival. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to share my screen briefly. And as Dr. Rival kind of prefaced, I am excited and enthusiastic about these proposed changes for next year. And I absolutely feel like just being in the building for the last 2 years, seeing the need for these changes for our school community, for our teachers, for our students, and just ways of building our capacity. So I'm gonna start from the beginning.
So Asia, can you talk about your inspiration for this, if you would?
Yes. So, oh wait, let me go backwards. I know how. So in terms of inspiration, different things. So I can talk about inspiration as I'm going through each one or each initiative, but absolutely inspired by the work that's being done in the school by the community of teachers, and then also the need for change that the students are experiencing too. So the initiatives are here. So my goals for the 2025-2026 school year are changes to the master schedule, and I'll kind of detail those, but specifically a later start time. For those on the call who are in this meeting that are not aware, the junior-senior building starts at 6:25. The students don't arrive at 6:25. However, the professionals responsible for educating and pouring into the students have to be here at 6:25 at the latest. And so this is one of the proposed changes. Also, the bell schedule, I propose that it changes. This was definitely inspired by the visit to Across the Bridge. So thank you again. I know we already mentioned it, but I wanted to say thank you because I was inspired by the bell schedule. So we are 7 through 12, but having 7th and 8th graders with high schoolers and on the same track, it's not the healthiest environment. And so the intention to change the bell schedule would be to put the 7th and 8th graders on a different schedule so that they are never transitioning at the same time as the 9th through 12th graders. The third thing in terms of the changes to the master schedule would be to have our career and technical school students attend Parkway in the morning. They currently attend in the afternoon, and it severely impacts everything. Everything kind of revolves around Parkway. The rationale to move it to morning is that it would help, one, Parkway, they lit up. So they have less districts in the morning, which means that our students would get more individualized attention at the career and technical schools. And a lot of times the report of why they withdraw is because they're overwhelmed. It's a new environment. They don't really feel that support there. And so the rationale to switch it was, that was a big reason why. And Parkway was wildly supportive of such. After I talk about the master schedule changes, proposed changes, I wanted to mention the school within a school model that we are looking to implement next year. And it's not really a new thing. It's not new anywhere in education, and it's also not new to Sto-Rox. However, one of the biggest reasons why I went away in previous years was because of staffing. So I kind of found a rationale around how to keep it solid if we are to implement it for next year. And then the advisory pride piece, that is actually also a part of the master schedule. It'll be embedded. So right now we kicked it off this year with the pride, and it stands for People Rising and Determined Effort. And it's really been like our push to get students intrinsically motivated using some extrinsic motivations right now. But it kind of puts you in the mindset of the house systems. But we kicked it off this year without changing the schedule permanently. And so what's happening right now is we're shifting the bells and essentially disrupting the routine of learning so that we can embed this 30 minutes every 2 weeks so our students build that camaraderie with their teachers and with the rest of the staff in the building. These are the proposed changes for our later start time. So I did a comparison side by side. Currently, like I said, our staff arrive at 6:25 and our students arrive at 7:10. And I'll also mention the dismissing at 1:55. If you notice, our teachers and our students dismiss at the same time. Ideally, our teachers will leave after students once the building is completely clear of our students. And then that 2 o'clock hour, that leaves a whole lot of opportunity for positive opportunities, but also currently our students are not getting involved in positive things. And so being done at 2 o'clock, but parents aren't done until 5 o'clock with work, their younger siblings aren't done until 3:45, 4 o'clock, it gives them a lot of room to be unproductive. So the proposed changes would be for students to arrive at 7:35, and that means that the doors are opening. So our procedure is to open doors, students get breakfast, students are welcomed in. Class would essentially start around 7:55. And so that almost pushes things back about an hour for our arrival time with students. Any questions so far? Okay. So I kind of already talked about this already. And we know the research is out there around students, especially high schoolers. And honestly, in my utopia, the little people will start earlier because they're up already. And then a lot of the barriers is that our older students are putting their younger students on the bus. And so having that responsibility in the home. But the other thing, and I talked to some of the coaches, is that currently that 2 o'clock of getting out of school, and then a lot of the coaches don't get here until 3. With this pushback, the opportunities for extracurricular schedules and opportunities would increase because they'll already be in the building. They don't need to leave for any reason. We have them, and then the coaches are here too. They become available. And then I already talked about the safety, especially with it getting warm outside. Everyone on the call should be aware of the lures of what sit beyond the school building in McKees Rocks. And so having that component after school, but then in the morning too, we have a high population of students who walk to school at 7 o'clock in the morning. During the winter and the fall, it's dark. So if we push the start time back, it would allow those students who are walking to at least feel a little bit more safe getting to school with daylight on their side. The functionality for staff, I'm always thinking about my teachers and staff, is just like the 6:25 thing. Yes, we show up, but then to be functional and alert and enthusiastic about educating young people. So I think the pushback with that is like, okay, we're here. It's not so like, oh, we're here. It's 6:25. So keep going. Here is the bell schedule that I'm proposing for next year. As you can see, Parkway will be in the morning. I did all the research. I got it down to like the minute. We'll still have 3-minute transitions for high schoolers. You'll notice that the core classes right now, our middle schoolers are on a block schedule. It was mixed reviews about the blocks. However, we absolutely see the value of additional or longer instructional time for our core classes. And so the core classes for our middle schoolers will be longer. This year, all periods are 41 minutes. And then with the block, obviously, it's 82. But with this, the core classes for middle schoolers will be 68 minutes long. And then their electives will be a little bit shorter. High schoolers, they would rotate through. You'll notice where in yellow, where it says advisory and focus, that would be that allotted time where right now we don't have any interventions. We don't have any advisories. And that's where we're kind of still in time with the Pride program. For next year, it will be intentionally embedded so that that camaraderie and that human check-in part is intentionally embedded daily. And it would also allow for the intervention, the academic interventions and supports necessary. Another thing I want to point out is the homeroom piece. So right now, school starts, once you get them in, they're out, get to it. I want to allow for time, especially with the intention and I'm gonna say expectation that we will be one-to-one next year. I need our students to have that time to put my things in my locker, grab my device, and embark on the day. And then at the end of the day, return my device as needed, get to my locker. So the same area where I start the day is also where I end the day. And I think it's important for those students to have those routines and rituals. You need questions about these changes? All right, I'm gonna keep going. So this is the Transition Academy, and we're still kind of playing with the name a little bit, but ultimately transition because that is the primary focus of it. Right now, when we look at our discipline data, our biggest barrier is students getting to class on time, staying in class, or maybe not even finding their way to class. So we have a percentage of students who really struggle with the transitions from class to class. Additionally, when we have those incidences where we have to place students, a lot of our teachers complain that so they just come back. There's no supports, there's no embedded, intentionality around, they're just back in business as usual. And we already knew that they struggled in this space. So the idea of the Transition Academy would be to house our students in our building, who we know that are struggling with barriers like transitioning or the larger classes. And so it will provide the alternative to the traditional class setting and the traditional transitions from period 1 to period 2. We would also intentionally embed the support and the counseling from our counseling and support staff. And then the goals ultimately are to help students with their challenges. So specifically around, like I said, the transitioning out, coming back, and even just the day-to-day transitions. We will provide, so the idea or the visual of it is that it would be contained to a wing of the building, and the teachers would come to the students to give instruction and to give their lessons. I have talked to students who did this in the past, and they're like, yeah, bring it back. I miss it. Like they used to call it the transition room. But essentially that's the students, I didn't get any negative feedback about. So when this happened or when this was here, the difference I think with this is that I would want to focus on our lower grade levels, the 7th through 9th graders, because when we look at the stats, those are the ones who are struggling the most with this. Our building is huge. And there's plenty of room to get lost if you want to get lost. And so those 7th graders coming from the 4 to 6 building and, still kind of being expected to walk in a single file line. And then it's like, hey, find your way. So I would really like to focus on those younger students who seem to be struggling with this transition into being an upperclassman or being a high schooler. And then also advantages. So what we're coming to realize is that a lot of students are leaving the district. And even when we have to place a student, those numbers get pulled too. So our ultimate goal is to retain students. So if we have students, and this is just a reality, we have students in some classrooms that are disruptive because they're overstimulated. And so students who might excel academically are frustrated with the student who I have a hard time sitting still, or I need breaks more often, or you talking about this is distracting me from doing that. A lot of students are like, I can't function in this space. And so to offer that alternative within our building. I won't go over everything on the list, but I am also excited about, just like with the outside agencies. So we have a lot of support in the building. And right now what's happening is that students are being pulled from classrooms, but in this respect, our agencies and Ms. Huber, our counselors would go to the students and it would be embedded in their schedule.
Asia, could you just add your point about this could be a quarterly rotation? Maybe somebody's having a tough time, go in for 9 weeks and then return to a larger environment?
Yeah, so it wouldn't necessarily be all year long. It wouldn't be a daily thing. We would look at it on a quarterly basis. So we run with 4 quarters in a year. These would be like, we have a list of students now who we want to invite the parents and then propose it, but it would essentially serve as per quarter. So if I'm in here for quarter 1 and I'm building my capacity and I'm learning that, like, okay, I can handle this, then the student could then transition back into the general education setting after the end of quarter 1. But it wouldn't be like a daily rotation or forced to be in the transition academy for the entire year. And then the same thing is really going to be based on data and what's being impactful for each individual student. Same thing if they're transitioning back from an outside placement. They would spend the quarter, which is about 9 weeks, in the transition academy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so this is my last slide. And this is, of course, all of this is pending board approval, but this is this wonderful idea I have to hold our students accountable in a way that does not negatively impact our building in terms of suspensions. So as I said before, a lot of our students struggle with the being to class on time and being in your designated locations and where you're supposed to be. And so the intention behind Saturday school, or how you want to phrase it, Saturday detention, is ultimately to reduce the out-of-school suspension. So right now, when students are being tracked and they are repeatedly arriving late to classes, the accountability looks like detention after school, but for us, they get their phones and they leave. And so after you skip so many after-school detentions, then we're looking at suspensions. Or if there's disruptions in the halls and it escalates to this point, then we're looking at out-of-school suspension. So the idea of a Saturday school program would be to get the student back into school as opposed to at home. And I'll say it, like, some of our kids are like, cool, I'll take another vacation day. So this idea, this rationale would be to bring them back into school in the instructional setting and essentially, one, hold them accountable for as a consequence, but also to have the opportunity to make up for the time lost because you were in the hall for, an additional 15 minutes. This is pending board approval. I know I already said that, but essentially we tried it out. We piloted it real quick, and the students were, they were livid. They were just like, what? I gotta come to school on Saturday? They lost it, but it cut down on the hallway experience. Like, I would come out of my office and it was just like, what's that? Like, how is this possible? So, and the teachers were supportive of it. And we were really on top of things in terms of like, okay, this is your 3rd time, or this is your 2nd time caught in a hall sweep, or, okay, you've been late to your math class 3 times. So, and then the warnings that if you are caught, and on the announcements, that Saturday detention is going to happen. It has, in that short little pilot opportunity, we've seen the difference within the space. So that's something else that I really want to implement next year at the start of the year, not as like a quick solution for the wrap up to the year. And those are generally what I'm trying to change or implement into the 25-26 school year.
Thank you, Asia. Anybody have any comments, questions for Asia?
Okay, thank you guys. I don't know. I'll stop sharing.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Looks like it's 4:55. If there's any other remarks, please speak up now.
Nancy, I was just going to ask Asia a clarifying question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, Asia, is the Saturday specifically suspensions, or is it more detention oriented?
It's more detention oriented. So
okay.
The goal is to prevent suspension.
To prevent the suspension.
Yes.
Okay.
So the threat that happened when we did the pilot, it was, if you don't show up to Saturday detention, then you have a suspension.
Okay.
So
right.
And parents
the other thing
don't want them to be suspended.
I wondered about was back in your the transition academy.
Yes.
This is just a suggestion. You may want to make sure you don't have alternative ed written in your description, because you also have alternative ed for just, it's a transition to help those kids coming back from
right
a quote unquote alternative ed well defined in the regulations, right?
So don't use you said don't use that terminology.
Don't use that in your description of your transition academy, right? Because I think somebody might get caught up in, well, did you get that PD approved? And that's not what you're looking at, is a PD approved. So
thank you.
That's it. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add to something that Vanna just said?
Please,
This is Jessica. And to that same point about you really need to make that clear distinction between alternative ed and the transition support that you're trying to provide. I think you need to look pretty carefully at what is considered regular ed and what is considered special ed, and who is eligible and what does that look like in kids' IEPs, because that could get really sticky quickly.
Yeah, we're super aware. And that's one thing we wanted to be clear about, is that it's not exclusive to students with IEPs, by no means. And a lot of students will name that, like and they're not students with IEPs, they're just students who it's too loud in here, or I just want somewhere where I can just focus. Or I don't want to have to go all the way down to the first floor because. So we were very specific about, but thank you, because I need to make that very clear in my wording. So thank you.
I have a quick question too. With the transition room, I was just wondering, I know years ago, because we've had it at the high school. One of the other reasons why it ended up closing was for staffing reasons. We didn't have enough staff. So I didn't know if you had thought about how it was going to be staffed.
Yes, I did, Ms. Kotek. So essentially, because, I know this is like our business, but at the beginning of the year when we were going to do the honors wing, and how the teacher who had that honors class would go into the class and teach it. So it'll be a part of one of the teacher's sections. So if the teacher is responsible for teaching 6 classes, then one of those 6 classes, the teacher would go in and to teach it. What will be constant would be the para. You have other questions, Ms. Kotek?
Nope, thank you.
Geez, Asia, I should bring you here every month. More people are super enthusiastic. We appreciate that. And we're going to continue next month on May 28th at 4 o'clock. Again, join us in person or virtually. And Dr. Lisa Mumau will be presenting her programming, some changes, highlights, and what have you. And then Heather will be presenting the next month for. So again, I thank you very much for your time, for your input. And as promised, we will continue conversations with PFM once that document's a little bit more fine-tuned, specific to a proposed amendment. We'll get it out to all of you and look at it, give critical feedback. We want to make it meaningful. So, no final comments? Okay, everybody have a great afternoon, evening, and enjoy the sunshine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Mike,